Hi, this is Audrey Blair. You're listening to the Change is Hard podcast, episode 6. Hi, how are you this fine day? It's actually gotten pretty cold here. I guess the winter has actually arrived in North Carolina, so it's gotten chilly. Anyway, today I was thinking about the last episode when I talked about the 4 levels of leadership, and I was thinking through the kind of impact you can have when you show up differently. And I remembered one of the very first interviews I did when I had the idea for this podcast years ago. I was still mostly consulting. And I just remember that one of my clients, we were working through a digital transformation project for their organization. And she suddenly started showing up quite differently in our meetings. And I asked her one day, what is going on? Because it was quite stark. Typically, when we would meet fairly regularly, once maybe every couple weeks or something. And we would have the requisite, how are you, how are things? And not that she was ever in a bad mood, but it was kind of the, same old, living the dream, those conversations that you have when you're doing a little bit of chit chat before you get into the business of things. But she suddenly started showing up with a lot more energy, being a lot more engaged with what the organization was doing, with a lot more excitement. And I said, what is going on? And she told me that she had a new boss, had come aboard, and I just recognized the impact it was having, not just on her, but her team and across their division. And I thought it was fascinating, and I thought it was a great lesson in when you show up differently, when you show up in a space as a leader and not focused on yourself and focused on the org as a whole, or focused on the others, not feeling like, oh, I've got to come in and prove myself and I've got to come in and lay down the law, the positive impact that makes and how it really shifts people's engagement, their energy, and how quickly they get on board with what it is that you're trying to do. So this particular episode, if you're a leader and you want to listen to an example of the kind of impact that you can make, this is the other side. This is that conversation with perhaps someone that is in your team or reports to you or just somewhere under your purview, and how they see the way you show up. And it's an old one. I pulled it out of the archive. I wasn't sure if it was something that I would use in this iteration of the podcast, but I do think that it's applicable, because I do think sometimes we hear the negative stuff. We hear when we're not doing well, but when we are doing well, I want you to see an example of how that can impact others. So please enjoy the conversation. We are kind of talking a little bit about digital transformation, but the funny thing is we don't talk about technology at all. And I think that's also fascinating, because leadership sometimes is bigger picture, broader than just the nuts and bolts in the operations of what it is that you're trying to do. So listen, if it's not your jam, I get it. You can skip this one and move on to the next one, but have a listen, and perhaps you can pull out some lessons in the kind of impact that you can make when you show up differently, when you show up in a space that is confident and you're showing up focused on others and helping them, meeting them where they are. And really, I think most importantly, when you listen to them, get their input in order to engage and empower them to go do great work. All right. See you later.
So, what do you want to?
It really struck me yesterday as we were talking. You really did have a pretty big shift in your reframe, your energy, There was really something about that I want to capture because I think it's a fantastic story. And as I work with leaders and in particular digital leaders, I think these are the kinds of stories that are very, very important for them to understand because it's not just about the organizational goals and the big picture things, but how what they do and how they execute matters to the individuals that they are leading and ultimately those individuals who are supporting their vision and their goals. And so it's that relationship there is very, very important. So I do appreciate you coming on and agreeing to do this with me. Any questions, any thoughts, any?
No, I think as a fellow and not nearly as advanced change practitioner, but someone who has seen changes fail and changes be successful, even to be struck, be a little cynical about change sometimes even, but to be struck by how just the little levers make it that exciting, and to have been impacted by that without my even being aware almost was kind of was kind of surprising. So I'm happy to share that story because it's just a great example of the kinds of capabilities when people kind of poo-poo, working people through change, how it doesn't have to be boiling the ocean. Sometimes maybe it should be, but it doesn't have to be for everything.
Right. Doesn't have to be for everything. But even boiling the ocean, there's a percolation that needs to occur. That happens in
Right.
phases. That's why it's called transformation, because it doesn't happen all at once. And so, yeah, just as an intro, for the sake of anonymity, is it okay if I just call you Chris?
Sure, absolutely. You can call me whatever you want, but that's a good one.
Is that a good one? Okay.
Yeah.
So, Chris works for an American technology company in the aerospace and defense industry. It's actually one of the top 10 defense contractors in the world, and they provide technology products and services to government, defense, and commercial sectors. So, I mean, you guys have about 50,000 employees, I think. So, this is no small endeavor when we talk about the impact of the organization, but also how there is a much larger impact that these changes are going to make, certainly in our region, in our country, and in particularly in
Yeah.
countries across the world as well. So this is huge. This is no small thing. Chris, why don't you talk to me a little bit about just your role, about you and your role in particular, just for the sake of intro.
Sure. Thanks for having me, and thanks for talking to me about this. My role in the organization, I've been with this company for more than 2 decades, so I've seen a lot of change come and go. And I've always worked in the IT organization in a variety of roles. And right now I work in the newly forming organizational change management, which is underneath the project management office. And so we're forming, and we are simultaneously putting our ducks in a row to get our processes in place, to put some of our methodologies and governance in place, while at the same time running a massive amount of projects that need a lot of organizational change management or OCM guidance, concurrently. So we're in this big state of flux in an IT organization that has developed over time as we've folded in companies and grown and grown and grown. And now we've gone from, when I started, about 300 to about 1,500 IT employees, serving, as you said, 50,000 employees across the world, and with a real focus on serving the business needs from a technology standpoint.
Okay, great, great. And as we were talking in just one of our regular cadence calls, you talked about and started talking to me about your new CIO and just the energy that you had there. So I want to take this time now and capture what you and other colleagues have experienced with the change with the CIO. Now I know you don't necessarily speak for or on behalf of the organization, but that's okay because you do represent in some capacity the organization and the impact that the leadership makes. I just have a conversation around this dramatic shift in your view, the energy and the action as it relates to the organization. So I guess, I mean, let's talk a little bit about it. I know there was a change. I don't know what precipitated the change in CIO, and I'm not sure if you want to share if there's any importance to that. But more specifically, from your perspective, what's different? What is different about this new CIO?
not to get into any details or overstep any boundaries, but it was a just a natural shift. So it was a retirement with a new leadership, not a mass shakeup or not a sense of failure within the organization. So we didn't start at a super low morale point where I think that would have been maybe a little bit different, even if someone was bumped and someone came in suddenly. This was a attrition kind of thing, and we just didn't know what to expect because the decision for a leader, an established leader in the organization, to retire at that level and to be replaced and to not really hear about it till it was a done deal was kind of like, okay, what are we facing now? And we've had a lot of leader turnover. So this, I mentioned I've been there a while, but I think this is a switch to maybe my 5th CIO working for, and some I've worked very closely with, I reported to, in some capacity, I've interacted with all of them at a support level.
Okay.
So,
But
you know,
but I appreciate you pointed out because I do think it does matter for context that this was not some horrible situation. They came in and any little thing that the CIO said, everyone's like, hallelujah. This is something, as you said, it wasn't as though morale was super low and everyone was aware that there was some huge shift or change that needed to happen. And while those instances do occur and some might find themselves in that situation, this is not one of them.
not one of them.
Okay.
Exactly. And I think that is important to know because it starts from a different place. The story starts from a different place in that case. However, and I think what we talked about yesterday, and I'm sure I won't. I'm sure I was way more eloquent yesterday, but for for purposes of this, the CIO that we had who retired was a successful CIO, but there was just a level of some just challenges and some lack of transparency, maybe some aggressive goal focus that didn't really address the employees' work-life balance needs, things like that, resources cut and cost savings, and being very good at that. But after living with that and knowing what we were facing and everybody working hard and pitching in to be successful, it gets to be a very stilted environment. So I do say that we knew that the change was going to happen very shortly before it happened. And we also were anticipating, is this going to be worse or is this going to be better? And so what I was sharing with you is that, it's palpably better. And the changes that the new leader brought didn't have anything to do with a massive reorg that made things better. Our workload did not get smaller. Our budgets did not increase. We didn't see a material change in our functional requirements, size, needs, work ethic, nothing like that. What this new leader brought was a very clear and very immediate willingness to communicate across the organization. Started on day one with a message out to all of us, very personable, very smart, very businesslike, but also very open, and acknowledged her own personal life, has fun things she likes to do that aren't at work, and wants to meet people, wants to travel, started having Zoom meetings where she's clearly visible. We've had probably 4 of them in a month. It's just little changes, little communication changes to let us know where she's at, what she's thinking, what the future she sees for us. And it's palpably cohesive. You know what I mean? It's just that nugget of, oh, I'm on a train that's going somewhere. I know which part of the train I'm on, and I know what I'm supposed to do for my job to get there. And I didn't know I was missing it until it showed up. I didn't know I didn't have it until I realized I was on the train again. And that was super exciting. So when I was sharing with you, is she didn't do anything fundamentally amazing. She didn't pull a rabbit out of a hat. She didn't give us all $1 million. She didn't do any of those things except for to share her vision in a way we could all see ourselves participate.
That is so Huge. I'm going to come back to a couple of things that you already mentioned because you talked about transparency, and you mentioned some of the things that she did and said. And actually, this is the first time that you even used the pronoun. I didn't know that it was even a
Well, I
woman.
kind of fluffed that on maybe,
I
so that
think,
nobody can go check and see who that was. But she is a female. So
yeah, that's fantastic. And whether how that factors in, I don't think it makes a difference at all. But it's so important. You talked about vision. You talked about understanding why. You talked about understanding that we're on a train, and not only are we on a train, it's going somewhere. Not just somewhere, but we now know where we're going. And in fact, I am on this train, and now I'm starting to understand what my role is, how I fit into this greater vision. That is so huge. Awareness. And we know as change practitioners that the very first block, I call them barriers to building blocks. The very first barrier that you need to get through is around awareness and clarity. And until you know what that is, it is absolutely a barrier, a stumbling block. Once you know what that is, you can use it as the foundational building block to where you're going. And so, as you talked about this vision, as she shared, can you explain a little bit, whatever it is that you can share, but what about it made it an impact for you specifically?
clearly we've had visions before, to your point.
Of
So we've
course.
had a vision. It just trying to think the elements through that really changed the vibe. And it's and when we're having these meetings, or even when we're having smaller sessions, she's had to absorb a lot. Like, you come into a company like this, you got to hit the ground running. You have to meet the team right away. You have to understand where everybody's standing. You have to understand where the money's flowing. You have to understand what the business wants. You have a lot to absorb. So as we've been cycling through meeting with her in smaller groups, or then also participating in her information sharing sessions, the things I see that are most different and in her vision is not really that it's different than it was before, but that it's more engaging. When she talks about vision, I feel like she's talking from a place of acknowledging the reality of the situation. There are still challenges. There's still not a huge pot of money somewhere. We're all going to be able to fund everything we want to do. She talked about engaging with our customers, and she also talked about it with a warmth that made it feel very real. Like, I believe that she believes this. I believe that she feels we're a service organization, which I love. I believe that she feels that we have done well so far, but can do better. So we've had challenges, we have opportunities. I believe that that she's committed to maybe implementing some of the things that will make it a little more efficient to get to where we need to go. So I don't really know. I don't know if it's definitely it's a different personality, definitely a different presentation. The transparency is kind of new, but it's maybe less that she's doing a job, but more that she really believes that these things are important. And so if I can get around, if she believes it, and it also happens to fit my paradigm, which I feel very strongly. I mean, I'm strongly in agreement with some of the things she's saying, which I'm like, this is so cool. Let's do this. This is great. It's very exciting. It's kind of like, when you're on a team and you're on your own 20, but you have a really great forward pass and you get that first down and you go, yeah, okay, we can keep going. Let's keep going. We don't have to get it all at once. We'll just keep going. And that's exciting. So I don't know how she brings that energy. It's kind of secret sauce. I don't know.
Secret sauce. The best leaders have that secret sauce. But you did say some things, right? You said it was engaging. But also, I think it's important to point out that she didn't position it as some grand pipe dream somewhere out, pie in the sky, lofty, something that you can't even wrap your head around.
Right.
And I also think
Or that benefits only part of the business. I mean, not to interrupt you, but a lot of what we get sold is because the stakeholders want it, and then the stockholders want it. And that's great. I think that's fantastic. That's great. That's why we're here as a business. But for me, I go, okay, great. It's not as internalized that way. So
Very good. Yes. No, thanks for pointing that out. But what you also said is that she also acknowledged some of the areas that were weaknesses or things that needed to have some fundamental changes or shifts to them as well. And so there was this balance of vision, but it was planted in reality and planted in, okay, I understand where we're starting from. We're still going to move forward, and we're going to do it, to use your analogy, the football analogy, which I totally love that, right? Starting at
Oh,
the 20, we're just going to chunk it out 10 yards at a time.
yeah.
And if you do that, and if you do it, if you go slow, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Before you know it, there's momentum, and you're getting there. So very, very important key elements that when you're communicating to your organization, you can't communicate to them like they are the shareholders. You have to communicate to them like they are the employees that are helping you to reach the goals and the vision that you've set out.
Yes, yes. I think beyond that, because there's so much more to that football analogy to break down. The goalposts don't move, the goal doesn't change, the points don't change. Like, you know where you're headed and you have to get there. And that's all good. The other thing that I think is important to note is that some of it is behavioral. And I believe that this particular leader has some skill sets that I don't know if she was born with them, or if she just magically is a people person or whatever. But I think they're behavioral. So behavior can be learned. And so the other thing that I am kind of absorbing or seeing when I see this change is, if she can do it and she can mean it, it's reproducible. It's not something where you go, oh, she's only good at that because she's an outgoing person, or what her Myers-Briggs says, or whatever. If you practice this, you can do this. So I think it's important also to know from a change agent standpoint, that if you're trying to drive a change, it may not feel comfortable at first. It may not be your forte to go here, but with just a little bit of tweaking and a little bit of gotta mean it, it's possible to reproduce this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the other thing to me is, this is great. I'm so much, as an employee, benefiting from the situation. I feel it in my desire to what I want to accomplish at work, and being very energized by it. But I also feel like, how could I leverage this as a leader myself? How can I learn this? How can I coach other people to do this? Because it made all the world of difference. And if you could just move those little levers, you can have massive change impact with very little effort.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be everything. It just has to be those little things you get right.
Yeah, well, and it's important because as you pointed out, that the idea and understanding, there are certain leaders that kind of make you feel like they want you to think that they are extraordinary and only they can do what they do.
Right.
And therefore, that's why you should follow them. And then there are those leaders who go, you know what, you don't get to make me extraordinary. You can be exactly the best version of you that you can be by some slight, just as you said, some slight behavioral changes, developing the skill set, starting small. And those are the leaders that frankly have the greater impact. Those leaders who make others leaders or feel extraordinary around them are the ones who have the greater impact. What's crazy about that is those are the ones that we do think, oh, you really are extraordinary, but because you're making me extraordinary. And that's the beauty of that. And then you can take that. What's that?
How do you not like someone who makes you feel extraordinary?
Exactly.
But that's such an interesting concept, because you're right. Because the other thing that is very different is that she doesn't have to be the smartest person in the room. You're exactly right. So when I've been in smaller settings with her where it's more interactive, she listens to everybody's comments. She's smart. She's going to educate herself. She's not sitting there in a void of no knowledge, but she takes in that information, and decisions get made, and they get made in a respectful way that acknowledges that you're not going to win them all, and you might get overruled, but you had your say and you got heard. And that too is rather enormous. And that doesn't happen. I mean, we've all had multiple bosses. They don't all do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think universal, we know that doesn't always happen. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, and there are a lot of bosses who think that they ask for this candor or openness, and then as soon as you give it to them, they're like, yeah, 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 but.
Yeah. Let me prove to you why you're wrong and I'm right.
Yes.
You only catch me once on that one.
Let me just show you why you're not in this seat, right? As if.
Like, okay, that's right. You can have it. But no, it is. It's important, and I think I've I've just always liked being part of a team. I mean, I think that the team mentality where everybody's pitching in and everybody's got expertise to bring and everybody has a different view, but we all have the same goal makes a stronger performance. Nothing I've seen in my business life has ever disproved my philosophy that that's the best way.
And research backs that as well. I was actually listening to a podcast that Adam Grant was on, and he was talking about relationship and conflicts and the teams or groups that tend to be more effective, how they're able to deal with particular conflicts without making them relational, right?
Right.
Understanding we have somewhere to go. All the ideas need to be heard. We're not always going to agree, but from the perspective of we're unified in our mission to do X, and as long as we agree on where we're going, all the stuff that will help us to get us there, that's fantastic. And so those tend to be the stronger groups, the ones that are more effective and reach those goals, not only on time, but on budget or under budget, and all of the stuff that goes into, as we're talking about, delivering on projects and incorporating change management elements into those as well. So you're absolutely key. So you mentioned too that I also found that curious that you said that not only that even internally you find yourselves talking about this amongst each other. What are those conversations about it? What is that?
Well, we come with those side conversations we all have, but if we're participating, now we have 17 channels of connectivity for every endpoint. So we can be on a side conversation easily enough. But it's usually things like, wow, are you hearing this? It's kind of incredulous. It's just that, gosh, this is great. It's very enthusiastic. And there are a lot of people like me who've been here a long time. There are many who are newer. We all bring something to the table. But those of us who've been here a while, or been at other places and ended up here, but have a longer career history, we've seen lots of things. We've been through a lot of change, and some was great and some was not so great. And we tend to be, I'm going to use a broad brushstroke here, but we tend to be a little cynical. Yeah, I've heard that before. So it's a little surprising. It was surprising even to me how I was just grinning along while she was talking. I'm sitting like a dope at my house, connected through the remote access because we're all at home now, of course, and I'm just grinning. Hey, this is great. And no one can see me, but I just feel good. And then I get an IM. Hey, are you catching this? Yeah, isn't this great? So it's just a lot of little side conversations of, well, we're gonna see how it is. Maybe this isn't real, but it feels pretty good. This is good. Right away, she got our attention. Right away, she got some engagement. Right away, she taught some old cynics to maybe be quiet and join the party again, whatever. But there's so much to bring to that, and it's nice to know that we don't have to stifle ourselves to be part of the conversation. Now, she's not going to listen to all of us. She's not going to take action because I have an opinion. I understand all of that. I don't have pie in the sky aspirations for how much I'm going to influence her. But I feel like if we have a conversation about my area of expertise, she'll consider it. And it may align with her experience, or she may have other things that she's experienced in her past history that help inform that. And wherever we have to get to, we'll get to a better place. And I'm a valued part of the team. That's huge.
That is
and it's not just me. It's everybody who listens and is willing to engage. And now we're like, oh yeah, I'm on steam again. This is great. So I don't know. It's that she did so little to affect so much change is kind of stunning.
It is kind of stunning. And I got to tell you, I'm laughing because as long as you and I have known each other and worked together,
It's been a
I
while.
would I would not ever call you giddy. And you right now are giddy.
Well, yeah, I guess so. You think about it and you get excited and you're not depressed about the next workday. And not to say, I mean, we weren't
Right.
staying down in a tunnel digging ditches. I mean, it's okay.
Of course.
But it's not Les Miserables. But sometimes you don't know what's holding you back until it's not there anymore. That's all.
Yes. That's great. And so when those leaders can come in and shine a light on those and bring some of that to the forefront and you recognize what you've been missing or where you've been. So we live in North Carolina now and moved here from LA. And anytime you wanted to drive anywhere in LA, even if it's 10 minutes down the road, you got to give yourself an hour to get there.
Yeah.
And so you move to a place like this and you're like, oh man, okay, it's time to go. But it's an hour before the event. And then you get there and you've got 45 minutes left because your perspective of how much time you spend on the road has shifted and you don't realize how much of your
Yeah.
life you've been sitting in a car until you move somewhere where it's not
You don't have to
necessary.
get anywhere near 5.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But that's great. So you also mentioned a few things that you have literally done differently. Some actions that you have taken as a result of this. To touch base on what some of those things are.
Well, some of them are very small. One little tiny thing is there's a big push for us to be on LinkedIn and social media and be participating in the corporate milieu for social media or to network that way and put our best foot forward that way. And even passive aggressive protest. Previously, I really didn't list my company. I listed a generic description of my company. I really didn't want to be associated with the company, not because I don't appreciate having a job or don't appreciate the job I do, just because I was like, it's not important to me that this be a distinguishing factor about my description. And the other day I was laughing at myself because I was like, I think I'll list my company again and my description and my social media accounts. And I think I think I will share that thing they asked to share about soliciting for interns. And I think I will contribute to the, such and such collection for helping, coworkers through natural disasters and things. And it's like, wow, I changed my behaviors just in that little tweak of mindset too. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm good. I'm happy to be here. And I think I'll be a more engaged, more mindful. I work hard, but I think I'll give it that extra. I think I'll have that extra energy for a while that says, I'm working hard, but I'm not resenting it. I'm not feeling put out because I've worked hard. I'm part of this group. I acknowledge I'm part of this group, and I'm getting something out of it, and I'm putting stuff into it. So, yeah. And it's just been a few weeks. It's not like it took a year to get here either. The quickness of the transformation in my own mind and in the minds of some others I work with was sudden. It was pretty sudden. And so it's doable and it's achievable, and it, what do you move? You move mountains a shovel of dirt at a time, but
That's right.
you get there, or a yard at a time. We go back to our football analogy.
It's so fascinating too that we're talking about the CIO, the CIO who under their purview, it's their responsibility to make the connection between people, technology, and culture. And we haven't talked about technology at all. And
Yeah.
that is the beauty of making that say that one more time.
Costs nothing.
Costs nothing.
Costs nothing.
Nothing. But you have a more empowered workforce. You have a workforce that is more engaged. They're more excited. They're going to do their job more efficiently. In fact, when they now talk about their job or their company to other people, it's going to seem more attractive to more attractive people.
Yep.
So when you
Yep.
put that out of, hey, we're looking to hire, the kind of people that you attract are those that are going to be the ones that are just as excited as you.
Yep.
And so the impact that that makes, it's phenomenal. It's
Yep.
phenomenal.
That's exact. I mean, I'm just nodding my head and saying, yeah, 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 like amen, sister. Preach it, because it's true. It's something that you don't always see, but when you see it, it shouldn't be a unicorn, right? It should be something that we can take to other change elements and say, look, we may have to may have to have new technology. We may have to have different processes. We may have to realign our organization. We may have to do a lot of things that are bigger than this. But I think if you start from a place where you are engaging your team at a level where they'll support you, you can get there, and you can make those pitches, and you can make those changes that may be harder down the line, because you've already established a trust element, a communications element, a transparency element, and can drive that change with authority, but not just authority, with leadership. Difference, right?
Big difference. Yeah. No, I absolutely, I absolutely love that, because one of the things that when I'm talking to leaders about, especially when we're talking very specifically about technology and why the technology is changing, or they've already decided to make that shift, what I try to explain is, look, this is great, but once you make that decision, you are laying it in the hands of your employees. And until you can affect their behavior and get them on board, your vision, your goal, the ROI on this technology lives and dies by their hands. And if you're not taking care of them, you're not going anywhere. That train is stalled.
Yeah, that training going on anywhere, or you've turned the ball over.
Back to
We have
the
a lot
football
of analogies.
analogy. Yeah.
Analogies.
That's right. That's right. It's a fumble or a turnover by downs, or you're punting or something. Well, listen, I totally appreciate your time and just the conversation today. I think this is so valuable for leaders to be able to hear and to understand the impact at the base level, because it's a symbiotic relationship. It really is. One
Yeah.
can't go without the other. And so really, really great. And I'm happy for you. I'm glad to see that you are encouraged and you're happy, as we've had a lots of different kinds of conversations, and the idea that you have a renewed energy for your role, for your organization, you're feeling heard and listened to. I know that you are going to make a greater impact as well as a result.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to see where this goes, and I appreciate your encouragement through our ongoing business relationship. That has been very helpful to me as well. But I think that just getting to share this and helping frame it in my own mind for use as I go forward, because it's a good example to me as well, is very helpful. So thank you for letting me share this story with you. I really appreciate it.
All right, no worries. All right, well, we'll talk soon. See you
Very
later,
good.
Chris.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Audrey.